There's no chance of going from despotism to liberty in a featherbed. Thomas Jefferson didn't pull any punches. Going from the largest government in history to a real land of the free, well, it's not going to be quick, and it won't be easy. Yet these days, most people seem to want to reap the blessings of freedom, yet few are willing to pay the actual cost. The founders, the old revolutionaries, well, they told us the real truth. There is no silver bullet. Liberty demands effort, dedication, fortitude, and perseverance. So on this episode, you're going to hear from people like Paine and Otis, Warren, Adams, and many others on the courage it takes to move us from tyranny to liberty. But first of all, before getting to that, welcome, and thank you for joining me here on the path to liberty. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the show for Friday, May 2nd, 2025. Let's kick it off with some more truth, the hard truth, not from a professor or a historian or some kind of expert or a politician, not even from me, but instead from one of the most important figures at the heart of the American Revolution, Thomas Paine, who absolutely did not sugarcoat anything here. He said, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it." And it was views like this type of principle, this understanding that supporting liberty even in the face of the mightiest empire in history, at least at that point, well, that led people like James Otis Jr. to talk about principle rather than comfort. Here he is in his speech against the writs of assistance in February of 1761. He said, "Let the consequences be what they will. I am determined to proceed. The only principles of public conduct that are worthy of a gentleman or a man are to sacrifice estate, ease, health, and applause, and even life itself to the sacred calls of his country. These manly sentiments in private life make the good citizen. In public life, the patriot and the hero." And writers that influenced the founders, the old revolutionaries, people like Montesquieu in his Spirit of Laws, this is 1748, he understood that tyrants see silence as permission and compliance as consent. He wrote, "Slavery is ever preceded by sleep, but a people who find no rest in any situation, who continually explore every part and feel nothing but pain, can hardly be lulled to sleep." And the year earlier, in 1747, Benjamin Franklin anonymously published a pamphlet, I believe it was, called Plain Truth. And he included in it this translated speech, or a segment of it translated from Sallust. I think it was spoken by Cato the Younger. He said, "Be not deceived. Divine assistance and protection are not to be obtained by timorous prayers. To succeed, you must join salutary counsels, vigilance, and courageous actions. No matter what you think, no matter what you believe, no matter what you do, to succeed, you have to have courage and you have to actually take action. If you want freedom, it's gonna take some work. Because anyone expecting to coast their way to liberty, well, they're already halfway to their chains." Joseph Hawley put it like this: "The people or state who will not or cannot defend their liberties and rights will not have any for any long time." Hawley, just like everyone else I'm citing in this episode, he understood that failing to defend liberty meant losing it, 100% guaranteed. And here's Thomas Gordon, writing in Cato's Letters number 62. I think this is 1722. He explained why inaction in response to attacks on liberty is so dangerous. Resistance for him is a necessity to avoid encouraging tyrants, encouraging the oppression in the first place. He said that not to resist any man's wickedness is to encourage it. And of course, this principle, this philosophy, this went back centuries and centuries, all the way to the ancients. Here we go to Cicero, writing in the waning years of the Roman Republic. I think this is around 44 BC when he wrote On Moral Duties. He made it brutally clear. He wrote, "He who does not, if he can, ward off or resist the injury offered to another is as much in fault as if he were to desert his parents, or his friends, or his country." So Cicero understood you have to take action. And Samuel Adams, the father of the American Revolution, he warned against false prudence. Basically, now is not the right time to take a stand for our natural rights. Now is not the right time to take a stand for our freedom. Let the system play things out. Because that kind of false prudence leads to complete inaction and the total destruction of liberty. Here he is in December of 1771, writing as Candidus in the Boston Gazette, which was the main publication of the Sons of Liberty at the time. He said, "If the liberties of America are ever completely ruined, of which in my opinion there is now the utmost danger, it will in all probability be the consequence of a mistaken notion of prudence, which leads men to acquiesce in measures of the most destructive tendency for the sake of present ease." And so Samuel Adams saw this kind of mistaken, this false prudence, as a great threat. And James Otis Jr. took it to the next level because he considered it the greatest enemy to liberty, the man of prudence. He said, "There is, however, no character so dangerous to liberty as the man of prudence." I mean, we hear these people all the time, and we have for years. "Oh, this isn't the right time to resist. That's radical. Nullification, that's got to wait. We should let this lawsuit play out, or wait till next November, or let this one person in power get things on the right path for us." These are all men of prudence, and for, James Otis Jr., these people are the most dangerous to liberty. He continued with an example of what he heard in his day. "You may possibly be right, but at this juncture it is not prudent to insist upon it." Well, he said, "This is the language of artful courtiers, and has done more hurt than can well be imagined." And here Otis was identifying the poison, but he also gave us the antidote. He said, "When our rights are invaded, it is high time to throw aside prudence." And hear from his sister, Mercy Otis Warren. She saw where that danger leads. Not in a fight. For most people and for most ages, it ends in a quiet, willing surrender. She said there is a certain supineness which generally overspreads the multitude and disposes mankind to submit quietly to any form of government rather than to be at the expense and hazard of resistance. There, Mercy Otis Warren described the common path, the one that most people take, the path of quiet submission. But Algernon Sidney, writing in Discourses Concerning Government around 1680, years later, Thomas Jefferson called it the best elementary book on government grounded in natural law ever written in any language. Important stuff here. Well, he warned that submission doesn't actually buy peace. Instead, it guarantees destruction. He said people must certainly perish who tamely suffer themselves to be oppressed by the injustice, cruelty, and malice of an ill magistrate. And back to Mercy Otis Warren, she explained that, well, even for the most patient people, for the most submissive people, there's still always a limit, a breaking point, when the invasions of their rights, when the attacks on their liberties, well, they pile high enough that eventually they're like, enough is enough. She wrote, "They patiently yield to despotic masters, until awakened by multiplied wrongs to the feelings of human nature, which, when once aroused to a consciousness of the native freedom and equal rights of man, ever revolts at the idea of servitude. And when people finally actually get to the point of making that choice, they don't actually need permission. They definitely don't need permission from government to put government back in its place. Here's St. George Tucker in his view of the Constitution of the United States. He said, "The acquiescence of the people of a state under any usurped authority for any length of time can never deprive them of the right of resuming the sovereign power into their own hands whenever they think fit or are able to do so, since that right is perfectly unalienable." But really, what tends to hold people back more than anything, sometimes they like the glorious ease. They like the comfort of not doing anything. But many times, even the people who actually see the wrongs and aren't really interested in all the comforts, well, they're still living in fear, and that holds back a lot of people. But once that fear is overcome, good things can happen. And here's how Thomas Paine put it: "The strength and powers of despotism consist wholly in the fear of resisting it. Not partly, not mostly, not kinda, not once in a while, but totally. This is totally what gives despotism its power." And here from the great patriot and Revolutionary War hero, Dr. Joseph Warren, in his Massacre Day oration, March 6th, 1775, just weeks before the shot heard around the world at Lexington and Concord, and just shortly before he actually lost his life in the Battle of Bunker Hill. Well, he called on the people to meet fear and empire with defiance. He said, "Our streets are again filled with armed men. Our harbor is crowded with ships of war. But these cannot intimidate us. Our liberty," he said, "must be preserved. It is far dearer than life. We hold it even dear as our allegiance. We must defend it against the attacks of friends as well as enemies. We cannot suffer even Britons to ravish it from us." And if that kind of phrasing in March of 1775 sounds kind of familiar, well, it should, because like Warren said on March 6th, Patrick Henry on March 23rd said he'd rather die than live on his knees. Here's the full quote: "If life is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery, forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." But even when we find success, when we find the courage to resist, to take a stand, there's always much more to be done. Samuel Adams reminded us that you can never give up, because that's exactly what the enemies of liberty, the enemies of freedom, want you to do. He said, "Instead of sitting down satisfied with the efforts we have already made, which is the wish of our enemies, the necessity of the times more than ever calls for our utmost circumspection, deliberation, fortitude, and perseverance." And in a warning for the ages, John Hancock reminded us to never forget. He said, "Surely you never will tamely suffer this country to be a den of thieves. Remember, my friends, from whom you sprang." These are absolutely timeless principles, and we work hard here at the TAC every single day to reach and teach more and more people about this essential history and what it takes to defend and support liberty, whether the government likes it or not. And they definitely do not. But nothing helps us do this work more than the financial faith and support of our members. If you got a couple of bucks of that dirty government fiat that they're quickly devaluing day in and day out, please consider throwing it our way over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. That's all spelled out. 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Our membership program starts out at just $2 a month. We also have annual, 5-year, and lifetime options available. Whatever you're open to, I think is really awesome, and I'm very grateful for any consideration you can give to joining us as a member today. But if you don't want to be a member, that's also cool, and you still want to help pitch in and support us, or if you already are a member and you want to pitch in a little bit more, I'm very grateful for that as well. You can make a one-time gift over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate. Again, that's all spelled out, 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate. I won't belabor that point. Again, I'd be very grateful for any consideration you give to putting your financial faith behind our work today. But there's also a bunch of free and easy peasy things that you can do to help us spread the word, primarily by taking actions that trigger the algorithms of the mainstream platforms, like watch time percentage on the major video platforms. If it's a 10-minute video and you watch 15 minutes, that's 150%, or 20 minutes is 200%. You get the idea. But also reviews on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform. Subscribe, get notifications, comments in the archive, share links, etc., etc. Again, really appreciate any consideration you can give to helping us out financially, otherwise, or both. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was interesting. I hope at times it was a little entertaining as well. But more important than anything, I hope it made you think, and I hope you learned something. Thank you again for spending some of your time with me today. I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday and Friday, here on the Path to Liberty.